Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
Oh, I'm so tired.
Dude,
it's one of those weeks.
Yep, it sure is. But I feel like it was one of those weeks last week too.
Yesterday, I thought it was Friday again. So,
I'm tired,
it seems like there's a lot of those weeks happening lately.
The sleep deprivation will do that to you.
Yeah. Brooke was out of town for a couple days, so I was stuck with the kids and the dog by myself. And that's not generally too bad until the 6-month-old doesn't sleep and wakes up every hour and a half. Then it catches up with you real fast. Yeah. So
you messaged me on Discord at like 3 a.m. a couple of days ago. I was just
probably did, yeah.
Dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's 2 a.m. feeding. And then while he's falling back asleep, just on my phone doing whatever, because you're up for an hour in the middle of the night. And then, yeah, sometimes get some things done or whatever. But that was about it. Yeah. Nothing terribly exciting. And then the funny thing was like Tuesday night, he didn't wake up at all. He just woke up the one time to eat and then went back to bed. And like normally he's up like every hour and a half or something, like just fussing. And then if you don't rock him a little bit, he won't go back to bed and he'll start screaming. But of course, that night, the best opportunity to sleep all week, I'm just laying in bed. My mind's racing. Like I cannot stop. And it was just one of those nights. Same thing happened last night. I don't know what's going on with me now. I'm so tired that I can't sleep.
Lovely.
What's new with you? Anything exciting? I remember Ruby Central posted, Richard Schneeman posted the long Ruby Central update this week about the timeline from September? Is that when all the drama happened?
Yep.
I mean, I kind of knew most of the things that were in there, but I didn't feel like it really uncovered anything new necessarily.
Yeah. There weren't any big revelations in there, I don't think. There were a couple of parts that I thought were perhaps unintentionally funny. Like the fact that the open source committee is still referred to as a committee when it is a committee of one. That's not really a committee then. That's a person doing a thing.
Yeah, and that's Richard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought a few parts were interesting. I perused it. I didn't read in depth because, like someone said in our work Slack today, it's like another freaking email from Ruby Central about this.
And it's long.
Yes, and it's long and kind of technical. But a lot of it was like, we didn't have run books on how to do certain things. And there's like a lot of breakdown of communication and a misunderstanding of how the GitHub enterprise business permissions worked, which caused them to accidentally remove the maintainers. And then they couldn't add them back without the maintainer like accepting it. And then by then everything had popped off. I was like, oh.
Yeah, because when you do an invite on GitHub, you don't get automatic access or whatever. They got to accept it, which is probably wise at a platform of that level. You don't want to be spamming people, like creating repos and inviting Linus Torvalds to your repo and just forcing him to be accepted. Doesn't make sense. But it's also like some of that stuff, I can see how it can be seen as like, oh, this was a mistake. And then it looks like it was more malicious than it was supposed to be or whatever, because we made a mistake. We can't really just undo it immediately. It's now a process or whatever, but it didn't feel like it resolved a lot of anything.
It also said that they justified their initial actions because of a security risk, but then a subsequent independent security audit was inconclusive because they no longer have the necessary logs.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, where did the logs go?
Might have been a retention period of 30 days or whatever it is. Not sure. I would assume that was kind of the thing. But you would think that they would have kept those logs then, because if there was a security risk, that's when you would back up the logs and have a copy of them.
Yeah, that was my first thought too. Unless they're talking about logs on GitHub or something, I'm not sure. And then they were like committing to like not having a single person be like the point of failure and strengthening the governance, improving transparency. But like, I'm really appreciative of Richard for writing this up. This is a great write-up. It's great. And this is not about him at all. This is like, we've heard this line, I feel like, for years, that like, we're going to be more transparent. We're going to be more transparent, but it never really happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know, like, what does strengthening governance even really mean? Like,
Right. Like, you need specifics when you're going to say something like that so that people actually know what's genuinely happening, not just a vague term of governance. Yes.
And I think part of that problem is the problem at the root of this whole issue, I think, was a miscommunication and a different understandings about what doing things meant. Because like the people that this whole document collectively refers to as the maintainers, it says they wanted things to be a certain way and Ruby Central wanted them to be a different way. It felt like the document was basically saying they both kind of misunderstood the way GitHub and the system actually worked, so that neither of them could actually have what they wanted and still give any leeway to the other side to get something that was acceptable to them as well. I don't know. I just felt like there's a huge just miscommunication, which it's like the whole thing about governance is kind of like, well, what does governance mean? Does it mean governance just for Ruby gems and Bundler? Does it mean to the nonprofit itself and like how its bylaws operate and how it does what it does? Because the organization itself is pretty opaque about how board members are selected, bylaws, and how meetings are run. So I was just like, are we talking about governance and transparency just for the open source stuff or for the organization itself? I'm doing like human shrug emoji now. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. What are we talking about when we talk about this, when those phrases get thrown around? Because I feel like every time someone does, they might be meaning something different than the last person I heard say it.
I would like to see all that stuff in detail of like, this is what we want to do. We want to have these projects are open source and they are maintained by these people. And it could be people we hire to do it, but open source contributors, yada, yada. And then we want the service to be maintained by such and such. And like, just lay all that out, what you want on both sides. Because I feel like it was a lot of talking past each other in some of the stuff that I've seen so far. And it just makes it like tough. If we're not going to get together and sit down and outline all of the specific details, then yeah, it's going to be a little vague and then we're never going to agree because we'll say one thing and then I don't agree with that. And it's like, well, it's because it can be interpreted in X different ways because it's too vague. It needs to be specific. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that at some point, but it's now been 6 months and this is still going on of like, let's write out the timeline of what happened. But at this point, what we want to see as the community is like, how is this going to be handled going forward? And it's probably too late. People are not happy and will not come back. And this is not something that can be fixed in that sense. So it's like, all right, that's fine. But starting now, what happens going forward? And let's just, what happened, and let's now find the path forward. I don't feel like I'm getting or hearing anything about that necessarily. And like, maybe that's still in progress or whatever. But as an organization that represents the community or claims they do, you need to have that conversation out in public so that the community can hear and critique and provide suggestions and whatever else. But it just feels like all that's in private. So all we get to do is wonder what the hell is going to happen to Ruby gems and Bundler and stuff going forward. Is anyone going to maintain it? Is there funding for it? What's happening? I feel like I have no idea. And that does not give me confidence going forward.
Well, Bundler's being maintained by the Ruby.
That's like the core Ruby team now, isn't it?
Right. Even though I tried to find the repo the other day and couldn't find it.
The repo lives inside of some other repo, right? For Bundler? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not sure. Like, I didn't actually go to the Bundler website to try to find it, but I was like looking on GitHub for it because I had an idea for a feature and I just couldn't find it.
Production monitoring can be complicated. There are tons of tools and techniques, but you just want to know that your app is up and your users are happy. When your customers encounter a problem, you need clear, actionable intelligence, not walls of charts and reams of logs. That's why they built Honeybadger, the monitoring tool you've always wanted, a tool that's there when you need it and gets out of your way when you don't. With Honeybadger, you'll know when critical errors occur and which customers are affected. You'll be able to respond instantly when your systems go down and improve the health of your systems over time. Plus, you can fix problems before your customers can even report them. Honeybadger is the application health monitoring tool built for you, the developer who cares about a quality product and happy customers. Start monitoring today at honeybadger.io. It's free to get started and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Once again, that's www.honeybadger.io. Well, the bundler organization on GitHub says bundlers move to the Ruby Gems organization. Then that takes you to the Ruby/Ruby Gems repository, and then bundler is a folder inside of there. So it's actually inside of
Ruby Gems.
It's inside the Ruby organization in the Ruby Gems repository. And I think Hiroshi's been the one doing majority of work on it.
Yeah, it looks like
now.
From the commits.
Yeah. And like bundler 4.0.9 got released last week. So there's still activity and changes going forward. But this reminds me of, you see the Axios thing in Node land?
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
A whole bunch of everywhere. Just like, don't install anything new right now. It's all bad.
Yeah. Wild.
It was another crypto loader thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Axios is an interesting thing. It's like the fetch API in the browser and in Node is not the smoothest to work with. So Axios kind of gives you some easier ways to making HTTP requests. What's happened with this is interesting though, because like Jason Sayman is the NPM account or GitHub user that maintains Axios. Like he said he had two-factor enabled. So what I was reading was like, this is probably that an old, like long-lived API token to NPM got compromised somewhere. And that's how they were able to publish the new versions of the package.
This is OpenAI's plan to make money, to make revenues. To all those API tokens they scrape out of your code that you send them because you're vibe coding. And they're like, all right,
that was the other funny thing this week was like Claude Code source code got leaked and they were like sending 8,000 DMCA requests. Like, you cannot look at our source code, but don't worry, we want to look at your source code to train our LMs. Interesting how that works.
My favorite part was that someone cloned it and then rewrote it into Python because now they can't DMCA that.
Yeah.
And I think he's now rewriting it into Rust or something. But I was like, that's so smart because now it's not something they can take down.
What's the name of that one tool? It's like Malice or something. It's a tool that you can point to like a docs or something, and it will create a clone of that service from scratch so that you can basically like do that where you can clone something and like, well, we didn't use the original source code. So we have our perfect clone of your software, but you can't tell us to take it down because we made it ourselves. What a time to live in.
I love it, dude. I love it. I don't like copyright law, so.
Yeah, it's going to get real weird the next few years. Yeah, the Axios thing was just wild because it's very, very widely used. And that meant that people, Axios over 100 million weekly downloads. My God. So it's just like, what a wild package to exploit.
And you see who they claim did it? North Korean state actor.
Oh, geez.
Microsoft published a research article about this like yesterday, I think. Yeah, Microsoft Threat Intelligence has attributed this infrastructure and the Axios MDM compromise to the Sapphire Fleet, a North Korean state actor.
What a crazy time. This is...
I'll link this article. It's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I was reading the Huntress had a blog post about it, going through all the details, and the domain sfrclak.com's port 8000 that it was communicating with. Yeah, they're going to have similar issues with Ruby Gems and Bundler, you know, like this is...
Isn't that why this happened in the first place, though? Is that they were trying to mitigate like supply chain attacks? That was like the original like reasoning that they used for like why this happened in the first place.
With the thing in September?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was part of the discussion or whatever. And in general, this is something that could happen anywhere, that you can publish a package via token or whatever. Because NPM has its similar thing to... Is it the same name, like Trusted Publishing?
I think so.
On Ruby Gems, yeah. Because I've been using that a bit. I haven't used it for everything. I'll still sometimes publish, you know, a package from my terminal and use two-factor for that. That's one of those things that, like, you have GitHub Actions. Now you have to make sure that if somebody makes a pull request to your repository, that your GitHub Actions don't accidentally share a secret or whatever with that fork when they run the actions to run the test suite or whatever. Because if you did accidentally leak a token to Ruby Gems or NPM, then you are in serious trouble that way. And that's like, I guess, part of how the trusted publishing stuff works, so that wouldn't be a CI action that would run on anybody else's GitHub Actions or pull requests or whatever. But yeah, you know, it still seems relatively scary and sketchy. How much software these days do you download that's just like, you have no idea necessarily where it comes from? You install Homebrew, you know, and trust that Postgres, Redis, anything else you install, NeoVim, whatever, just kind of trust that, yeah, Homebrew's secured that and made sure that those downloads come from the original author and nothing else gets injected or whatever.
Are you tired of babysitting your job queues? Let us do it for you. JudoScale monitors and autoscales your job queues so you can stop babysitting and get back to coding. We support Sidekick, SolidQ, GoodJob, and just about every other job backend in Rubyland. And of course, we autoscale your web services too. JudoScale scales up your apps faster than any other autoscaler, so request timeouts and backed up job queues are mitigated before they become a problem. JudoScale has a free plan you can use forever, so there's literally no risk, whether you're on Heroku, AWS, Render, or any other cloud platform. Visit judoscale.com and get your job queues under control.
I was seeing the other day, like someone had posted, like, people are like building these AI slot plugins for Obsidian, and like some of these are actually like, they've been taken down, but some of them were actually like trying to steal stuff from you. And they were like, so you should read every plugin before you install it. I'm like, so I have to read the source code of anything I want to install now in order to ensure that I'm not going to get hacked? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, and especially when like you install, I don't know, a driver for your Logitech mouse and it's like a gig. And it's, of course, proprietary. So how in the world are you possibly going to read the source code or analyze any of that stuff? It's just going to be impossible. And it's going to get worse and worse because, yeah, if things are just purely vibe coded, then it's going to be easy. Those are going to be the easy targets, low hanging fruit to exploit. And people may not notice. People may not know how to fix the issues, whatever. Who knows? Did you see the... Let me find these on X. So Gary Tan, who's like the president of Y Combinator or whatever, was talking, you know, not that long ago about how Rails was a great option for vibe coding and stuff. But then somebody yesterday, here it is. This is great. This is a breakdown of, so Gary's talking about now he's vibe coding these apps and doing 37,000 lines of code per day across 5 projects and getting faster. So he's writing 37,000 lines of code. So this person on X says, I audited Gary's website after he bragged about 37,000 lines of code per day and a 72-day shipping streak. Here's what 78,000 lines of AI slop code actually looks like in production. A single homepage load of garyslist.org downloads 6.42 megabytes across 169 requests for a newsletter blog thingy. The homepage ships 28 test files to every visitor, not test results, actual test harnesses. So there's like a membership form controller test, media grid controller test, story composer controller test, 300 kilobytes of test code, all returning HTTP 200. Also downloads 78 stimulus controllers. So he's using Rails for this, for sure there. AI image generation, voice extraction, video generation, radar charts. Like a lot of these are things that would be used in an admin area or something. So like, that's kind of the default way that Rails does it anyways, though. It's like preloading those assets or whatever. So some of that makes sense the way that it's done. It's maybe not as optimal as it could be, but it is what it is. Logo situation is my favorite. The same bear gets downloaded 8 times per page load, 3 PNG copies, 2 WebP variants, 2 AVIF variants, and a 512 by 512 favicon. One of the AVIF files is 0 bytes, an empty file, and a failed image conversion that got deployed and served to production. Total logo bandwidth is 654 kilobytes for 2 logos. But the real bandwidth killer are article images served from CloudFront as raw, uncompressed PNGs, and the PNGs are like 2 megabytes apiece. Browser sends accept image AVIF, image WebP explicitly when asking for modern formats. The server ignores it and sends 4 megabytes of raw PNGs. If they were using WebP for these, they would be 200 to 400 kilobytes combined. So there's a waste of 4 megabytes for 2 images. Then more highlights, 512 kilobytes, tricks, rich text editor, loaded as on a read-only homepage, spillover from the backend. Again, that's kind of the way things
I'm not
are
going to
set up by default. No. Honestly, maybe that should change, right? But you think about the way that, say, Basecamp works. It's like there are marketing pages. They kind of would like to preload stuff so that when you get logged into the app, then you have all the functionality or whatever. So it makes sense. But honestly, a lot of that should probably be separated out because people who are just browsing the marketing site that never sign up or don't have an account or whatever, do they need any of that content? No.
Unless he's got tricks in like a contact form or something.
Yeah, right. That could be. 47 images with empty alt tags on a civic engagement quote site. Entire page content rendered twice in the DOM, mobile and desktop. Duplicate title tags in the head. An empty CSS file, just a manifest comment, content hashed and served. Posthog analytics proxies through /s to bypass ad blockers as his own source code comment says so. I think that's actually like something Posthog talks about in their docs to set up though. Because it's like if you had analytics dot whatever, then like your ad blockers or whatever will try to do a regex or something for obvious tracking tools like that. Then source code literally contains this comment: load SDK from our proxy bypasses ad blockers. 501c4 nonprofit actively circumventing its readers' privacy tools to track them harder, while shipping test files, a 0 byte broken image and 4 megabytes of raw PNGs to production. And then he compares, for context, the Hacker News homepage run by Y Combinator, Gary's own org, makes 7 requests and transfers 12 kilobytes. To be fair, YC's Hacker News is really, really, really intended to be like almost a Craigslist level of depth in design and functionality. Super lightweight, but anyways, I saw this just getting reposted over and over and over and over.
Well, see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the link to that tweet. I'm going to paste it into Claude and say, fix all these issues.
You know what Gary's going to do? He's going to do the same thing.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of that was pretty, like, whatever. That's, you're just
some of it was
petty.
pretty nitpicky. Yeah. And it's like, how many of us have shipped a 2 megabyte PNG to production?
Well, that one's
all
even.
Of us, I guarantee you, all of us have.
That one's an even such bigger problem. Fix. No, that's not necessarily. Well, it is in this instance, but So I was doing a deep investigation I'm like, why is this page taking so long to load? And it turns out that there were so many images that this person had like put into posts that were loading on the page that when you try to fetch the next page, it was like, okay, we're fetching the next page. Then it waits for the images to come through and then it displays it. And so it looked like the server was what was causing the lag, but it wasn't. The server responded almost instantly. It was the fact that it had to wait for those render blocking images to download. And there's no easy solution to that.
Still that limit of parallel requests to the same domain and in your
you can just be like, use lazy loading for your image. It's not that easy, especially when you have to get into like height and what does it look like before the image is loaded. We don't want shifting content.
Right.
That means we need to know the exact image dimensions. And then you're like, okay, well, then you could just use something like Cloudinary to like serve like the correct version or the best optimized, smallest thing you can do. And it's like, but that's not easy either to implement. Like it's easy in idea. It's not easy to do. Like when you have to wire it up into an existing system that may have like millions of images. That one specifically triggered me because that one's one I've been thinking about if there's an easier solution to solve it. There just really isn't. Like it's a hard problem.
Yeah, you reminded me of the other day. I was just thinking about like, you remember when fonts used to be the hardest problem? It was like, we always had to like deal with what's it called? The layout shift or whatever.
The flash.
Yeah, flash of unstyled content or whatever.
Yeah, the LCS maybe.
I can't remember the acronym for it or whatever, but I haven't even thought of that in a long time because these days, like every embed snippet is pretty much like, here's the things you need. Just go do it. Or internet speeds are fast enough generally that doesn't matter as much as it used to. And so, some of those things have changed, but yeah, it's still quite a challenge. Like for images, you might need to have like the source set thing. So you can have like a smaller version of the image on mobile and a bigger version on desktop at a much higher resolution. And maybe it's supposed to be a different size on desktop because you've got a bigger viewport and it is complicated. There's still so many little things to do right. And CSS is still pretty challenging to account for every single version of whatever layout you might want to have. I was watching, I forget his name now, of course. I can picture his YouTube channel and stuff, but there's a guy that does YouTube videos on CSS all the time and like just talks about like, okay, you want two buttons next to each other and it's like a wish list button and like a something with more text. And on desktop, you can do them as 50-50 width, but there are so many different sizes as you do the responsive version of it that you might want to use like a fit content or something so that smaller versions in the weird sizes before they like stack, you want one button to be like a third and the other to be like 2/3 wide. But it's like, you can't just make breakpoints for every single situation. You have these limited breakpoints, but you need to be able to use these other CSS features in order to kind of balance it out in those in between like strange places. And like, there's so much detail to getting those parts of the UI right still. And it's still quite a pain to do.
So I got the acronyms for us. The first contentful paint, FCP, is the browser basically just rendering what it can. And then the large is contentful paint, LCP. So I was kind of right. And then layout shifts are cumulative layout shift, CLS. These shifts occur when a web font and its fallback take up different amounts of space on the page. There's literally websites dedicated out there to like find the closest available web font to like this font so that it looks less weird when it comes in.
Right. You want to choose your fallback fonts of like Windows has these pre-installed, Mac OS has these pre-installed. We can use Arial is going to be closest to X, Y, or Z, the custom font we want. So there's like less of a layout shift there. FOUC was the flash of unstyled content that I was thinking of.
Gotcha.
Let's just make an acronym for literally everything. Why not?
Might as well. The FOUCP, LCP, SH, whatever.
OMG, WTF, BBQ.
LOL.
FOUT, flash of unformatted text. That's another one there for you. Yeah. I don't know. This week, security wise, has been crazy, crazy, crazy. Watching this stuff happen periodically in Node land is scary and dangerous, but they're obviously probably the biggest target. There's the most 100 million downloads a week of Axios. That's wild. So, like, great thing to attack if at all possible. And if we can hopefully fend off things in Ruby land, that would be amazing. But it's like eventually it'll be somebody's. I am sure there are plenty of people targeting Ruby for things. And I don't know. How do you even protect against all that? It is just, it's just going to get worse
now
and worse.
With AI. People are using AI to attack other things. Like, it's just going to become a bigger and bigger problem.
Yeah. And like we were talking about with GitHub's uptime has dropped below 90%.
But they're almost back to 3 nines, right? 89.99%.
Yeah, right. I saw that one and I thought that was hilarious. But I think that was something that I heard because like Basecamp has got a CLI officially now. And it's like an interesting thing because the volume of requests goes up like tremendously because of OpenClaw and stuff. It's like every agent that people are running now might make 50 or 100 requests instead of what a human might do in the same period of time, might be 5 or 10. And if you're talking, we got 10x the amount of requests to handle between users and agents. Holy crap. That's going to be crazy to just deal with. And then what do you have to optimize for then? Do we have to all go back to like, all right, we got to write our web servers in the most fast compiled language possible instead of ones for making good products or whatever, like Ruby and Rails. We might all have to go optimize our shit in Rust from now on.
We need more microservices.
We have to go to microservices now. No.
This is an interesting question. If you are a company that has an API and now AI is the big thing, so you add an MCP, but you realize that MCPs are not the solution and are dying or should be dead. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm going to make a CLI and then these tools can like write scripts and use that. And now you've like doubled your web traffic. What are like some ways to even mitigate that? Like if I don't want the CLI to like prevent a real user from experiencing a little slowdown, are you just like putting that stuff on a different API? Are you proxying it differently? Are you rate limiting somehow? Like,
I don't know. It's tough because if you are already using an API, if you expose 2 APIs, when one is your ai.api.example.org and like someone's going to notice that like this other one is rate limited differently or whatever, just change the endpoint URL and try and get around it or whatever. Like they're going to detect those things that are running differently and just figure it out and abuse it however they can. So I don't know. It seems like it's going to be quite a challenge to handle that. I've also seen a whole bunch of like companies starting to do like pricing.md as a web page now and just rendering a markdown version of their pricing and making things more accessible to agents to grab content from, which I think is interesting, having all your marketing pages that could be in markdown. Like that seems cool. Yeah.
Well, the Claude Code docs do this really well where you can do a .md at the end and it serves you like the markdown version. I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, it makes sense for docs, but like not normally marketing pages because those are all for humans. But now it like makes sense that if your LLM results are going to contain content from searches or whatever like that, then it makes perfect sense to have a markdown version of your marketing pages too. So,
well, in theory,
at least Rails has that
markdown page would be a much lower cost like hit on your server than would be rendering the whole one. So in theory, you're probably like saving yourself
no fonts, no CSS, no JavaScript,
no images,
nothing. Yeah, it might be a URL to an image, but that's it. It's
not rendering it. So your server's doing way less work.
Request it necessarily. Yeah. So it should be super fast.
Yeah, and it should
Especially in
be
Rust.
costing you less.
Yeah. So I don't know. Things are probably going to change quite a bit. I am in agreement that MCP stuff doesn't seem like it's the right long-term thing. You got to experiment and try things, and stuff sort of catches on. Then enough people use it to figure out the warts and realize, like, yeah, that's not it. That ain't the right thing or whatever. And that's fine. That's good. It gets you to the next step, to whatever is a better solution. But a lot of those cases, like, you don't know the answer ahead of time. If that were true, we wouldn't have had HTTP 1.0 and 1.1 and whatever. We would have just gone to HTTP 3.
Yeah, the MCP thing is on my mind too, because I've been talking about doing this for a while and never did it because that's something I do. But I had realized that the linear MCP was like chewing out a ton of tokens, even when it wasn't being used. And I was like, well, we should switch to all these skills or whatever that are using linear MCP. We should change it with a CLI. And that's like, we can back that with our own scripts if needed, but we should switch away from that. And Drew was actually auditing his token usage, and he and I had talked about this in the past, but he actually went and did the work, which is not something I did, and switched it over and made it optional.
Surprise.
Yeah, I know. But it's just interesting to see like the MCPs, the skills, like they chew into your context. And like, if you're constantly running out of tokens, like you should look into how many MCP servers you have installed, because I have 1 or 2 and that's it. And I don't need more because I just use CLIs, or I tell Claude to write a script to interface with the API instead of going through the MCP. Because typically you're only going to be doing a certain set of a thing. So it's not, yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of using scripts over MCPs right now.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it all changes in the next 12 months. Guarantee it's quite different by then. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got. I got more work to go do.
I'm super busy. We're dog fooding some stuff in Podia today, and I've only been using Podia. No Slack, no nothing, just Podia. And it's been pretty fun.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, nice. Well, that's all I got. So I guess we'll catch you next week.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Later.
Later.